ko Arangi toko monga, ko rangatata toko awa, ko Ionic toko waka, ko Kerry Lee tako inga, ke Browns Bay aho e noho ana. Kia ora, kia orana, ma lo ale, whakalahi atu, bula vanaka, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi everyone, my name's Kerry Lee. I am a lecturer at the University of Auckland. And as my students know, I am passionate about technology. So thanks for giving up your time for today's session. A little bit about me, I am primary trained. I have worked predominantly in West Auckland schools, and I am from Timaru originally, rural area. And so for me, I resonate the Southern Alps and especially Mount Cook that I used to see every time I'd bike home. So today's session. Today's session, we're going to just start initially just getting our heads into technology. Because I'm not sure your backgrounds, I'm not sure how much you know about the curriculum. So if we start off, technology is one of the disciplines. It's compulsory from the age of 5 up to 14, and it's broken up into strands. There are 3 main strands. So we always call it head, hand, heart. So the head is the thinking, that's the knowledge strand. The heart is nature, and the hands, the doing, is the practice. So head, hand, heart, learning and thinking about our actions and how we affect technology, how technology affects us, and actually usually making something and thinking and learning while we make. Each one of these strands is broken down into components. So we've got 8 components. So the nature strand has 2 components, the knowledge strand has 3, and the practice strand has 3. Each one of those components has an achievement objective, and we'll get to that later. So today we're going to be talking about hydroponics. So I've been interested in hydroponics for many, many years. My father-in-law was really into it because he was in a wheelchair and he was able to do gardening at a height that suited him. The beauty of hydroponics is 90% of pathogens, of the diseases that plants get, is in the soil. Get rid of the soil, you get rid of those diseases, so you don't have to spray as much. It's also really good because it can be inside. Children, it doesn't matter about the weather, the children can work inside with their plants growing. It can be at any height. You can have a lot of, you can put it over in one area, as long as it's getting some sunlight, it's fine. So you can determine where it's going to go, how it's going to be put, whereas pretty much gardening's outside. And if you're in an area where you've got people coming and going and destroying plants, it can be pretty soul destroying for kids. So hydroponics are fantastic because they're inside. So there's a few things that we're going to talk about that are going to hopefully make it easier for you as the teacher. So there's lots of different ways you can do hydroponics. So instead of the plant putting down roots and looking for the nutrients, you're going to give the nutrients straight to the plant in the water. So they're going to get some nutrients from the air, but the majority from the water that you're going to give them, because you're going to put nutrient in the water for them. So they don't have to spread out these huge roots looking for food. You're going to give it to them straight in the water that they're going to take on board. So that means that a plant that's grown hydroponically doesn't need the big root structure to hold it up so it doesn't fall over. It doesn't need, because you're going to have the medium to do that, but it doesn't need that huge root structure looking for food because you're going to give it to it. It doesn't have to go looking for water because you're going to go give it to it. So it's going to put all of its energy into growing the leaf and the fruit that you want, rather than some of the leaf, some of the fruit, and a lot of root. So we're going to go through some basics of things that you need. So you need a pot, and that's for the plant to grow in. And there's a range of pots. So this one here, similar to the ones on the slide, is about 25, 30 cents. This one here is about 50 cents, roundabout. So what you want is a plant, but a pot, but it's got to have some way for the water to get in. So you don't want it to be solid on the bottom. So it's okay to use yogurt containers, but you're going to have holes in the bottom so the water can get in. So now you need to think about, okay, we've got the pot and we got the plant, but what's going to hold it up? So you need some sort of inert material. So often you can get expanded clay. And these are just little wee balls. They come in different sizes. This one's about the size of a marble. Or you can get pumice. So, and then you're just going to put them in the pot. Simple as that. It's just like scoria. It's just tiny little rocks that the plant is going to put its roots through. The neat thing is that unlike soil, when you've got the roots going in and the soil gets stuck around the roots, with this expanded clay, it's in these hard balls. When you're finished with the plant, you pick the plant up and you shake it and all the little balls fall down. Now they're just there to hold the plant, nothing else. So you can reuse them and reuse them again and again. So you've got an outlay, financial outlay, but once you've finished with that plant and you're going to put some new ones in, you can use the same expanded clay again and again and again. Another way you can do is by growing things in something called grow wool or rock wool. And I've been told what they do is these are rocks, they're superheated and then they're put in a centrifuge and they spin it out a bit like candy floss. Now, I've never actually seen it. Most of the ones we get in New Zealand come from Australia, but that's what I've been told, the process of making this grow wool or rock wool. And they come in big long slabs and you break off they come in big long slabs and you break off one of these and then that will be your little square. And so I've got a bean seed here and I can put it in my rock wool, put that in water, and then that's going to grow. So it's a bit like cotton wool in effect, but it holds its shape a little bit. And then what I can do is I can put this in my yogurt container. When my plant gets quite big, and say up to here, it's going to flop over unless I get more grow wool. So what I can do is then I can put this one in this container. So this has got grow wool as well. So now my bean plant is in a bigger cube. And then if I want to, I can get a bigger cube, put this one in a bigger cube. So I can get bigger and bigger and bigger until if I want to, I can have a huge, big, high tomato plant growing in a cube of grow wool. And then that's it. So I just plop that in my bit of water and nutrient. So that's another option. Now what you're going to do is you're going to put nutrients in the water. Rather than having something like Thrive or Wormwee that's usually in one container and you pour it in, with hydroponics you tend to have two containers and you put A and you put B and you put it together in the water, stir it up, and then use that. And it's just the standard way that you often use get with nutrients. So you put usually about half a teaspoon of A with half a teaspoon of B. mix it up and add the water. And you just follow the instructions on the container. There isn't a right and a wrong. At some point, you're going to sort of think, oh, I've been using this water a lot, because you recycle the water, and you sort of think, oh, I'm guessing there's not much left there. Now you can buy fancy testing kits. Schools normally don't bother. And you just sort of think, oh, it's been a couple of weeks, I'll change the water. And then there's a good chance there's a lot of nutrients still in that water. So I would take it home and use it for my pot plants at home, or maybe my veggie garden, or maybe the school's got a veggie garden you could, or flower garden, and you could use the excess water that you're now going to throw away and put it somewhere else. So with your plants, these ones are kumara plants. So I've just got a top of it kumara. You can buy these plants as is, or you can start a kumara off, just leave it for a while and it will start shooting. Same with potatoes, they will shoot up as well. And then once you've got that, you can then snap off one plant and it will root up, put it in water and it will root. So once you've got one plant, just break it up into bits, put it, sorry, put it into water, and it will root up for you. Now, what some schools will do is they will buy seedlings, and then they will wash out the soil and use the seedlings in their hydroponics unit, because that's quicker for the kids. Otherwise, you can start off with seeds, but it just takes so much longer. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Okay, sorry. So most people will buy commercial, or a lot of people will buy commercial plants just to save time. Okay, now we're going to go through the different types. Please excuse my drawing. I'm not flash. So there's a whole lot of different techniques. So one is called surface watering. So that's where you put your container and your plant and sit it in a tub. And what I've tended to do in the past is, in the tub, you just make a hole and you put a cork in the hole, and then you just pull out the cork, let the water out, put the plug in, back in. And you just do that on a regular basis. So what you want to do is, the plant needs to be in a medium that's damp. But you don't want it sitting in water. And that's really important to understand, because roots of plants, unless there's special plants that like to grow actually in water, so oxygen weed is one that grows in lakes and things like that. Most plants do not like wet feet. They do not like sitting with water all around them, because it's really hard for them to get oxygen and nutrients in to their roots. So they need air that's trapped. So you're going to wet the substrate that the plants are in, but you're not going to let it sit in that. So that's what surface watering is about. You let it sit in your container in a tray, and then you leave it for a while, pull out the plug, let the water drain away. You keep that water, and then the next day you'll do it again. So it's something that children can do every single day, but you just don't want it sitting in water, because it needs that oxygen. So sub-irrigation is the next system. So this is where you've got the substrate actually sitting in the water. Now, it's really, really important that you select your plants carefully when you do this. So the media has to be really small particles, because that helps the water with capillary action come up through to the plant at the top. So you want the plant at the top. You don't want big, long roots that are going to mean they're sitting in that water that's down the bottom. So you want a plant that's more shallow rooted at the top, and then the water is going to be sucked up through via capillary action in that substrate. It's going to come up and it's going to wet the roots, and the plant will be able to grow. The system down the bottom actually had an upturned bottle, you know, like your pet feeder. So you've got an upturned bottle and the water will come out, and in your ice cream container, as it evaporates or as it gets used by the plant, more water will come out of your bottle. Okay, another system is the Wick system. So this is a wick. So it's just a clear plastic tube. And in it, you put pumice or you put something absorbent. So that will allow the water to get sucked up and to come out the top. So this is where it can sit in the bottom. And then this bottom bit here is going to have all the water. And then the water goes sucked up the tube. And then that's going to wet whatever's at the top. So if I would have this sitting in here, it would suck up the water from down below, and it would go and wet into this container in here. If I put a hole in it, it went straight through it. So that's a really useful system. So you end up having an ice cream container at the bottom with this white wick in the middle, and then you have your ice cream container at the top. And then I just prop it up with lids of the milk containers. So it's sitting just slightly up, and that wick is sucking up that water, wetting the substrate at the top, but it's not sitting in water constantly. It's just sitting in damp, say scoria or pumice, whatever you're using. Sorry, pumice, whatever you're using. Okay, another system, and this is really popular in the UK, is to use a grow bag. So you can use a rubbish bag. You can, in the UK, you can actually buy these specifically all ready to go. You just put a hole in the top and put the plant in the bag that's filled with pumice. So you get a bag, fill it with pumice, put some holes in the bottom, because you're going to put that grow bag in a tray of water or something like that. And then you're going to put holes in the top and plant in the top. And then that's it. So the plant will grow. It's going to grow down into your expanded clay or your pumice. The water in that tray at the bottom is going to get sucked up into the pumice. The pumice is going to be damp, but it's not going to be saturated wet. So your roots are going to have that oxygen, but they're going to be able to reach water really quickly, and then they'll grow. And again, easy to move because you're just moving this tray. So if you want to, you could move it outside when, say, you're doing a subject, and then bring it in for playtime and lunchtime because you don't want other kids touching your plants. So they can move backwards and forwards, depending on where the light is. You may want more sunlight, you may want less. You're in control of whether your plants are going to get scorched leaves or not, because now you're able to move them in and out dependent. Okay, drip feed. Drip feed, you just need a big container at the top. So this could be your Just Juice container, or you can get malt vinegar in a big brown container at most supermarkets. And then I use irrigation tubing. So then you'll get irrigation tubing coming off and splitting. You can get different lengths and widths of the tubing. If you use the fatter irrigation tubing, what you can do is you get this lovely little tool. It's got a sharp end to it. And then all you do is push it into the hose. Says she and she can't. There we are, pop. So now I've got a hole. And now I can put in, this is the little dripper. Now I can put in a little dripper. Or if I want to, I can put in a joiner with another bit of a plastic tubing, and then I can put a little dripper on the end or a sprayer. So then I can have this long bit of tubing with other little bits of tubing feeding off there. So that's just giving your children a lot of choice. How many plants? How many kids in the class? Are we working in groups? Are we working one each? Who's going to do it? So how many of these big containers have we got? How often do we want to do it? What's the roster? You've got a lot of choice. So you might want to start small to start off with and just have a similar structure to what's in the picture. Get some success, and then you may break it up into each table could have their own hydroponics unit if they wanted to. So you can mix and match and do so many things. Okay, soak and drain is another one. So this is where you've got water coming out and going into a gutter or going into a whole range of little yogurt containers. So it comes out, it goes in, but it doesn't sit there for any length of time. And then you pour it back into that main container. So you're going to raise it. It's going to go into wet your substrate, and then you're going to lower it and it's going to come out again. So here's an image of one. So you'll have the container at the at one end. It will flow from a tube into the ice cream container, then into tube into another ice cream container, possibly another one, another one, another one. And then you will lower it, and the containers then will go on a slope and all the water will flow back. And then you can tilt it up, it will come back through, tilt it back, and it will flow back. So you want the substrate to get wet, but not sitting in it. And how often you do it is going to be totally up to you. Survive weekends, not a problem. Okay, so nutrient film technique is where it goes from one to another, to another, to another, to another. So that's very similar to what I was talking to you about with the flood at the previous one, with the flood and drain. So it's at the top, you've got a reservoir, and then it comes down, water comes down past the plants, and then goes into usually another reservoir at the bottom. And then you can get a little fish pump. They're about $30. They're not super expensive. You don't need one that's really strong, because you're only going a meter or so, depending on how many you've got. And so you just want the water that's coming from the bottom reservoir being pumped back up to the top reservoir. And how you do that, whether it's open, whether it's closed, the beauty of it having some sort of lid is it just stops evaporation. But there's lots and lots of ways that you and your children can come up with how to stop the evaporation, because there isn't a right and a wrong, just like technology. So it's a matter of having a play, seeing some variety, seeing what you can do, get some success, choose plants that are easily grown and that are quick. So lettuces tend to be quite quick if you choose the right ones. Cos lettuce can be quite good. Oak leaf can be quite good. So you want them quick and easy to grow. So here's some examples. You can see here, this is a PET bottle, one after the other. So the reservoir is going at the top, and the water is going to just go through and then be collected down the bottom. So I'm just going to pause there. Has anyone got any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to presume you're all fine. I'll keep going. Okay, so now it's a matter of thinking about what we can do with our class if you're early childhood, with your centre, with your kura. So now I'd like you just for a couple of minutes to think about reasons for why you might want to do hydroponics. So with some of my classes this week, we've been talking about scenarios. So why would you maybe want to do hydroponics? Why would you want to go grow plants? So just have a think about that for just a minute or two. Okay. Right. So hopefully you've got some reasons. Now I want us to think a little bit more. So with some of my classes this week, we've been talking about technology needing to be authentic and real. So you're not doing something because the teacher's telling you doing it. You're doing it because it's a real problem. You're solving a real need. It's a real opportunity. And the students are driving it, not you. And it's really, really hard. If you get your scenario right and it's meaningful and authentic to your students, then you've won half your battle. You're not going to have as many behavior issues because the kids are driving it themselves. So it's a matter of thinking, why hydroponics? Why, from a kid's perspective, why would they want to do it? So what you tend to do with schools is you've got a big topic, a big idea, and often they have that for the whole term. So you have this big idea, and then sometimes it will be broken into 2 weeks on this, 2 weeks on this, 2 weeks on this, or sometimes it might be a month on this, and science and technology are put together, or social studies and technology are together, or art, it might be a STEAM topic. There's lots of different ways they can do it. So if it was an example for sustainability, there might be, that would be the term topic. And then you could look at food for sustainability. There's a lot of things you could do other than food, but if you looked at food, then you possibly could look at, okay, with food, let's look at one aspect could be excess fruit. So then some of the solutions to, we've got excess fruit at school. So it could be we've got feijoa trees at school, or we've got these lemon trees at school, and we've got all this fruit. What can we do with it? So some of the solutions the students could come up with are, we've got a community pantry, bottling and preserving and making jams. The beauty of that means that 6 months later, you're able to use that produce. You could make leathers. So to make leathers, what you do is you get a dehydrator, you food process normally you food process the fruit. So it might be apples, and you might mix in some berries or something like that. And then you lay it out on the dehydrator, turn it on, and dehydrate it overnight, or you can do it in the oven. And then it becomes like leather, and then you can roll it up. The good thing about that is it lasts for ages, and it's great for school lunches. You could make ice blocks. It could be we're going to make something, I reckon we can make the most money for our school gala. The money's going to the junior playground. Why don't we try really, really hard? Because if we get lots of money, we're going to get lots of things for our venture playground. And we've got all of these lemons. What could we make? And then as a class, they could look at all the many things they could make with the lemons or the feijoas or whatever's in season. And and then they would be able to sell that at the school gala. You would have to go into where you would make it, because you probably wouldn't be making it in your classroom if it is going for sale. You could look at doing something and giving it to someone else. So it could be your kohanga reo, an ECE centre. You could actually create a class book. We've got all this fruit for this season, and these are some things of what we can do. So each child would develop the recipe, they'd take photos, and then they would come up with their own page of what you can do with lemons or with feijoas, and it might be ice blocks, or it might be smoothies, or it might be muffins. But you've got this wonderful cookbook, and your class has produced it, and it is the solution because of excess fruit. So there's so many different things for that topic of sustainability, and you're then thinking, sustainability, how can I do the technology? Let's look at fruit, let's look at food, let's tease that out. Lots of fruit, okay, we're going to utilize lots of fruit. That's my scenario. How can we utilize lots of fruit? And then the possible solutions that could come out of it are what we've just listed. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is now think about that if your students are going to do a unit on hydroponic unit, what are they going to need to know? So in the chat, what we're going to do is we're going to get a link of the things that the students are going to need to know. So what, if you can click on that link, and it will take you to a form. Oh, not that one, Bernie. Can you, there should be another one.
Sorry, Kerry, just getting confirmation. Is this the brainstorming page?
Yes, please.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. That should be on the chat now if everyone would like to link onto that.
So if you jump onto that, that's going to take you to a Google Doc. And then from that Google Doc, you can look at all the things that you may need to consider when you're doing a unit. So what knowledge do you need to know? What resources? And I've made some columns there for, I really don't know what I don't know. So what are some things you will need to think about as a teacher if you're doing this unit? What will your students need to know? So for some of you, you'll think, I don't know anything about this, I'm going to have to read. And my students are going to need to know about that. So you may, if they're old enough, you may give the task to them, or you may download that material and give them access to it in whatever way is appropriate for them. It could be posters, or it could be printed material, or it could be online links. So if you just jump on and spend 5 minutes now populating that Google Doc with things you're going to have to think about and know. So just jump into a square that someone's not in that square. Some of these things you're putting up are great. And what I will do is, I don't know the answer, So I will find out some of the answers for you. I have a cheat sheet. So the slides that have been produced have come from a handout that I've got. So I'm happy to share that with you. And when at the bottom of that information, I'll include some of the answers to some of the things you may want to know. There's so much information on Google, however. As a teacher, I find this very difficult because I want to add my ideas too. And as soon as I do that, I know I'm going to shut it down. So it's very hard to sit on my hands and not type. You've got some amazing ideas. So if you're thinking about practically, what are some things that you need to keep those plants so they grow? So you've got the right number in each pot, the sorts of pots, that you're actually going to get water from A to B. So what are the things you're going to actually need to know? So for some of these ones that you've done, you can see how you're going to get a lovely mix of science, learning about the plants and the growing, learning about medium, but you're then going to look at using some of that knowledge to help you grow things. So you're going to learn about oxygen coming into the roots, that it can't sit in water because, heck, there's oxygen in water. That's what fish breathe. So how come plants can't do that? So you're going to learn quite a bit of science. Someone's put that they're going to have to learn about evaporation. So that's pretty important. There's also there about gravity. That was really important. I was doing this with some year 7 and 8s. It didn't actually dawn on me that they thought they didn't realize you were going to need a slope. So they got their ice cream containers, they put holes in it at exactly the same height, holes already in, so there was no going back with holes in the ice cream containers. And I said, where's the water coming in and where it's going to go? It's going to go in that one, it's going to come out that one, and then it's going to go into the next one, and then the next one. So we looked at it, and it didn't move because it needed a slope for it to actually move from one to the other to the other. They hadn't realized about gravity. And then we had the issue of holes. So it's like, well, what are we going to do now? Oh, just sellotape them. So we tried that, put sellotape, put water in, and the sellotape came off. So we tried blue tack, that didn't work. So then we started looking at what would work and what wouldn't work, and they had no idea about how things might be tacky when it's dry, but they totally change when they're wet. And that in itself was a big learning curve. It was a learning curve for me too, because there was a whole lot of stuff that I took for granted. And then when I was teaching, I realized that they didn't know. And that was a really, really good experience for me. The beauty of, if you're using irrigation tubing, they've got things called dummy clips, I think they're called dummy something, plugs, dummy plugs. And if you make a hole with this yellow tool, you can get these dummy plugs, and they're just like a little plug that goes in and fills up your hole. So it's really good. You make a hole and you think, I'd put that in the wrong place. You put one of these plugs in and it seals it, and then water doesn't come out. So a great thing to know. So good questions with regards to experts coming in and talking. I have been to a range of different hydroponic centres that sell hydroponic stuff, and some I would definitely not take children to. There are a couple that are really good, and they're into gardening rather than into marijuana, because that's the other main thing. It's a very effective way of growing plants. So I've been to a couple where their main thing is tin foil around the plants and the lights and things like that, and so they're not growing vegetables, but you just need to find the right one. So it's just something you need to be aware of. So when you're going in, if you do want to go on a class trip, just be aware to check them out first. They're really very, very plentiful information, and most of the people are really, really knowledgeable. There are a few that I've used that do take class trips, and they're great. They don't expect you to buy all of these containers. They sell them, but they don't expect you to buy them. They're going to talk about ice cream containers and yogurt containers because they know they're going to sell the medium. They know then they're going to sell the pumice. They're going to sell you the nutrients. So they are getting some sales, and hopefully with the students, they're also going to go home and want to continue. So, but just check out the hydroponics areas, the hydroponic shops in your area, and just see whether they're appropriate, or whether maybe it's going to be an email or a phone call to someone rather than the actual visit. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. So we've got lots of really, really neat ideas. I'll collate those and I'll also send you that file for you so you can have that as a resource as well. So what I'd like you to do now is, we were going to do it in groups, but what I'd like you to do is just do this individually, is think about scenarios, 1 or 2 scenarios for why your students might want to do hydroponics, or why they might want to grow something. So that could be gardening outside, why they might want to look at sustainability. So what would be the scenario that you would give that would be authentic to the students? So you might think about working with juniors, you might think you're going to work with year 7 and 8s, or it might be you and the buddy class doing something. So what would be a scenario? And then Bernie put up the link earlier. So that's the one that says Forms Glee. So when you've got some scenarios, pop them in there, and TENZ is going to collate them and they will give them back to you when, because other universities are also collating scenarios, and these will be given back to you, I'm going to say in about 3 weeks' time. So anyone who's attended will get these sent out to them and shared back. So think about a couple of scenarios and pop them into that Google form. Okay, I'm aware of the time. What I'm going to do is ask you to finish that off at the end, if you could, and I'm just going to keep moving on. I'm going to whiz through some slides, because what I did was I wasn't sure about timing, so I made some extra slides. So what we'd do is look at what they're going to need to know. So if we'd had time, we would have then brainstormed how the lesson would flow. What I'm going to do is I'll start next week's session here. Because this is a weekly thing, so we'll start here and we'll look at planning for a lesson. So we'll then plan, we'll look at components and learning the indicators of progression diagrams, and then we'll get into indicators. So has anyone got any questions before we finish? Okay, so today's session, just a quick recap, is basically being able to grow plants inside and some of the strategies you need. Please contact TENZ, or I will give you my email if you have any concerns. So that will also be emailed out to you as my personal email. And I'm happy, whether you're early childhood, primary or secondary, hydroponics is definitely something you can do. It allows originality, creativity. There isn't one right way, and you can get some success. And it's got a lot of application, and also it's what happens in the real world. So it's not just something that, oh, the kids are doing, it's what's happening in the real world. So hopefully you've got some ideas, and hopefully a little bit more confident and aware than you were before. And so hopefully I'll see some of you, if not all of you, same time next Thursday, when we'll continue on. So we'll do hydroponics for the whole of this month, and then the next month we're going to look at a different way of teaching and planning. So I'm just going to close with a karakia. Kia mātou, kia mātou, kia tau, kua mutu mātou, a mātou mahi, me kaupapa hoki, arahina mātou, ka a mātou mahi anō, kia whakatapua mātou, ki ngā kaupapa, me ngā mea a whakapona, manaki te a mai mātou. So for the rest of your day, all the best with everything else you've got to do for the rest of the day, with all the people who care about you and you care about them. All the best, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Okay, bye everyone.